Hello and welcome back to the Hibs Observer post-match debrief with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Patrick McPartlin. We're acutely aware that it looks like we've coordinated our outfits for this trip to Ibrox, but I can assure you we're not quite.
Great minds.
Great minds. We'll go for that. Great minds think alike. We're here to review Rangers 1, Hibs 0. A frustrating day at Ibrox for Hibs, going down by a single goal, but very competitive performance, well in the game for long periods, missed a penalty, beaten by an absolute worldie in the end. Patrick, again, positives to build on for the side, so we're going to get into that. We'll dissect the game a bit today, and then we'll have a fuller review of it tomorrow. Just before we get going though, just a word for our sponsors. Good Vibes Giveaways are proud to sponsor the Hibs Observer and offer fantastic prizes to fans of the club. Prizes change weekly and include tech and gadgets, days out, weekends away, tax-free cash, and even Oasis tickets. So get your tickets now at www.goodvibesgiveaways.com and enter for your chance to spread the good vibes. Patrick, what do you make of the game today?
It's hard to be too critical given we've seen Hibs come here in recent seasons and I suppose not really give a good account of themselves, no matter how well they've been doing previously. I think when they came under Nick Montgomery and Hibs had been going well, I think it was maybe 6 games unbeaten before they came to Ibrox under Nick Montgomery, and then that game almost felt like a kind of a turning point in his tenure. And we've seen previous managers before Montgomery come here and get it wrong a little bit in terms of team selection, in terms of tactics. And I think knowing the David Gray Hibs team as we do from what we've seen so far this season, but also during his caretaker sort of spells in charge, having 4 of them, I think you sort of knew that this wasn't going to be it wasn't really going to be sort of like a backs to the wall, like 2 backs of 5 and hope for the best. But you also knew it wasn't going to be the case that he was going to be, I suppose, naive. Even with Rangers playing on Thursday night in Europe, you would have. I think you would have known that it was going to be a tough test, and we certainly saw that to begin with. Rangers came flying out of the traps. Hibs actually doing quite well, I thought, to deal with that. They had their chances. I mean, 18 shots on goal is quite a stat for a team visiting Ibrox. It's the same as what Rangers had. Not a whole lot on target, but when you consider that Hibs have come here before and struggled to get any shots on target in recent seasons, that's got to be a positive. And I think we've also seen there were some good performances today, collectively and individually. I don't think there'll be many goalkeepers who'll come to Ibrox would be as quiet as Joe Bursick was, and I think that's one wonder save from Cyril Desser's header in the second half, but apart from that, just a really good defensive performance as well. The goal, if you're going to get beaten by a goal, then a strike like Tom Lawrence's is probably the way to go, because it really was. I think David Gray called it a worldie in his post-match press conference, and I think that's probably the best way to describe it. It was a very well struck goal, and nothing the goalkeeper could really do about it. I think the main sort of negative for him would just be that penalty award just before half time, and then not taking advantage of it. That's one of those big moments that if you are going to get a result at places like this, if you are going to get a result against the bigger teams in the league like Celtic, Rangers, you have to take those chances. And on another day, Nikola Jurjevic could have buried it in the bottom corner. He could have sent McPartlin the wrong way. In the end, it would have been a really good opportunity to get back in the game at a good time. And I'm sure Big Nick will be kicking himself that he didn't do better with it. But I think on the whole, given what we saw possibly from maybe the St Mirren game at the start of the season, it's not really been that long from there to here, but I think you can see a lot of improvements in this team. Obviously, greater strength and depth as well. You've got players coming back from injury, a couple of new signings in there. Junior Hoylett in his first start today, really impressive. Dwight Gale off the bench again, very close to the header at the death, and we know what he's going to bring the side. So I think it probably will feel a little bit like they could have got a draw out of this. But I think there are a lot of positives to take from it. David Gray did say mixed emotions afterwards, and I think that's probably the best way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mixed emotions because I don't think you come to places like this and a lot of the time have the opportunities that Hibs did to get themselves on the score sheet, and then you feel especially a bit hard done by when you're beaten by a goal like that. But I think if you're taking if you are taking the positives from it, it was the approach to the game. I think was right. There was some kind of suggestion beforehand that Hibs might have went to a back five, but I think probably in the end it was a sensible decision to keep it close to what we've seen over the past few weeks, because there has been progression there. It was more of a sort of 4-4-1-1 than the 4-2-3-1 if you want to get bogged down in on paper formations. And I think for the most part, Hibs, they executed it pretty well.
Yeah.
They wanted to stop Rangers playing through the middle of the park. They were happy to funnel them out wide. I think you had either Kukurevich or Josh Campbell just trying to block the ball going into Conor Barron. I know Lawrence scored the goal, but I think in that first half you saw very, very little of him and Nicholas Raskin, who was substituted at half time. I think they looked happy to try and funnel a lot of the play down Rangers' left hand side, where with Jeffy and Ross McCausland was taken off at half time. So Philip Clement, even though his team were ahead, I think you could see that he felt compelled to make some changes, and I think a lot of that was maybe testament to how Hibs were nullifying certain players, certain kind of Rangers players were struggling to have an impact on the game. So I think that in terms of a setup and how to approach these games, I think David Gray got it. He got it pretty much spot on, but then it then comes down to I feel like you talk about it so often in games against Rangers and Celtic, like the big moments. What do you do? How do you handle those when they come along? And obviously his big moment was the penalty for Kukurevich, and they've just landed on the wrong side of those fine margins today. And I think that's something we asked David Gray about in the press conference, is that maybe a next step when you come to places like this, like being able to make sure that those big moments do go your way. So I think that is possibly just where it fell short for Hibs today. But I think if we can keep it on the topic of defence at the moment, I think maybe a word for Marvin Ekpiteta and Warren Ahora. I think very solid, and I think maybe Ekpiteta, especially just because he was one of those players, I think in the first couple of weeks of the season, who was coming in for a wee bit of criticism. Obviously Ahora maybe not to the same extent, but I think certainly over the past couple of weeks there's been signs that partnership was starting to materialise, starting to gel a wee bit, and I thought both of them had a very good game today.
Yeah, I think so, and I kind of touched on this when I was talking about Joe Bursick not really having an awful lot to do. I mean, he came and collected a few crosses, no chance with a goal, as we said, and that, quite frankly, outstanding save from Dessers in the second half, and you just think he shouldn't really have any right to get into that, but it's just, it's a really kind of instinctive save, and I think that'll help him. He spoke ahead of the match about his own performances this season, and I think he kind of rated them as all right. I think there was maybe, I mean, he didn't go into detail. Obviously, you don't expect a goalkeeper to really dwell on any mistakes they might have made for obvious reasons, but I think it felt like there was an acceptance that maybe the performances to begin with hadn't been that good, and particularly difficult for the defence, given that they had been really miserly in pre-season and in the League Cup. Got a group stage, not letting in any goals, and they were racking up the clean sheets. And we thought this bodes well, because obviously, it was a big summer of change at Easter Road. You had Paul Hanlon moving on to pastures new. Will Fish's loan ended last year. Rocky Bashiri as well. I think there was a little bit of sort of debate about whether he's going to be whether he would be starting. Like he had under Montgomery, and I think to begin with we saw the early signs were good, with the caveat that it was sort of lower league opposition, or it was pre-season friendlies, and then I think the first couple of league games you thought this is they really should have bedded in by this point, and you think they've had time playing together, but it can be little things. I mean, I've spoken before when we've been discussing various topics that quite often it can be another part of the team or another part of the pitch is maybe having an impact. So if you've got a different kind of personnel in front of you, that can maybe make the difference. So perhaps having Kwon, having Nectar Triantis in there, maybe that's making a difference. Just sometimes it could be a really kind of minor thing, but it's just maybe like this, how they play, or how they can sort of link up with the centre backs. And I think Ahora and Ekpiteta both look really comfortable today. Really kind of solid pairing, like individually good, collectively good. I think the first couple of games there were a few hairy moments, and you could see some fans almost watching behind their eyes, behind their hands, behind their eyes. So that'd be a good trick. Watching behind their hands, just because there was a kind of nerviness about it. Like, are they going to, are there going to be more mistakes? And I think we've seen in the St Johnstone game, and certainly today, that that partnership looks to be strengthening again. And like I say, you concede one goal today, and it's a worldie that you've not really got any hope of stopping. It's just just one of those that you just kind of have to accept and move on. But a clean sheet against St Johnstone, almost a clean sheet today, bar kind of unstoppable worldie, and it gives them something to build on going into Motherwell next week. Because I think the spotlight was on the centre of defence after last season. Certainly defensively in general, last season there were a lot of questions asked, but after a bit of a rocky start, it looks like the defence is sort of solidifying a little bit. And as a former defender, I think David Gray will be particularly pleased to see that. But I think overall, it's just the whole team is now sort of working a lot better as a unit, more cohesive. It's maybe understandable at the start of the season when you're still trying to get a feel for what your kind of best 11 is. You maybe sort of certain players for certain games. So, and again today, you've not got Martin Boyle, you've not got Joe Newell, the captain. If they're both fit, there's a good chance they maybe start. So, there's also potentially an argument that this wasn't the kind of first 11 for Hibs. But despite that, still performing well, still, I think could hold their heads high. Despite a defeat, where we've not said that after some games this season. So I think again, we talk about positives to build on, and I think another one of those would be sort of how much the defence seems to be gelling after a bit of a sort of shaky start.
Yeah, and then that sets a foundation, doesn't it? Really, on top of which you can build. I think the midfield pairing, Giannis and Kwon, looks very effective. Giannis, I thought, had another good game today. He's very, very comfortable on the ball, even at places like this.
And you forget how young he is as well. Both, the same with Kwon. Like these are two young guys, but they certainly play with a lot more maturity. I don't want to use the cliche of old head and young shoulders, but that is what it is essentially.
Yeah, there is calm heads there, and I think you move it into maybe in the forward line, maybe still finding cohesion, that same cohesion, because there's maybe been a bit more change there in terms of maybe guys who haven't played with each other so often. But I think I just kind of want to touch on before we finish a kind of important point. Obviously, disappointing to miss the penalty from a Hibs perspective. Like, there's no getting away from that. But I think David Gray, it's just something he touched on in his press conference, and you can read the full transcript of that on our website.
And watch it live on YouTube.
And watch it live on YouTube too, whatever your preference. He talked about the reaction after that penalty miss, where he said obviously he's disappointed it doesn't go in the net, but then he was quite proud of the fact that Hibs then, he felt it could have been easy for Hibs to go under. Because the crowd gets up after that. He felt it's almost like Rangers have scored another goal. The reaction to that, it's right on half time. It would have really completely changed the game, really easily to take a real psychological blow from that. But Hibs actually came out and they started the second half really well. They had an extended spell there. I think that using that term, not going under, it kind of takes me back to the first league game of the season, where Joe Newell spoke after the 3-0 game against St Mirren, and he said, that was his exact words, he was like, we can't go under like that. So I think to then come here and show a bit of fortitude, a bit of kind of psychological mettle to be able to brush that off, obviously not get yourself back into the game in terms of the scoreline, but certainly the performance after the break, again, it's, I don't want to, feel as if we're polishing up the defeat too much here, but I think you're kind of looking at things to improve on what has come before, and I think certainly in terms of, I think the phrase I used earlier on was kind of laying a foundation to then build upon. I think you're maybe starting to see things like that improving upon things that just weren't there last season or even at the start of this season. So I think you can set those foundations. I keep using that word, and then use that as maybe a springboard to now. I think the next run of games is much more winnable in terms of how Hibs started the season with that difficult run. So I don't know what that noise was there. I hope somebody's all right there. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there are things to build on, and it's now a case of trying to turn these positives into results going forward, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we sort of touched on this, but I do think a performance like this at a venue like this against a team like this is there are positives to be taken from it. And as you say, like, we're not trying to polish. I mean, a defeat's a defeat. David Gray was saying that. He said mixed emotions because a lot of positives to take from it, but ultimately at the end of the day, it is a defeat. And I think I saw somebody on social media suggesting that kind of poor result but a good performance, and that probably sums it up. Like you do want to, when you consider how many games Hibs have gone since they ever get people want you to wrap something up.
Yeah.
When you consider how long it's been since Hibs did sort of win at Ibrox, I think that's something like 11 games now without a win against them at any venue, going back to I think the League Cup semi-final under Jack Ross. I'm going to start shouting in a minute. It's, I think some of the games we saw last season and the season before, you did sort of fear for Hibs a little bit, because it did feel a little bit like kind of lambs to the slaughter. It wasn't, when you consider like some Hibs teams have come out here and they'd sort of really given Rangers a game, they'd maybe sort of won, 2-1, 3-2. There was a time, we've spoken about this before in previous videos, there was a time when I think Hibs fans almost, if not expected to beat Rangers, they certainly expected it to be a close game and expected it to be, expect them to have a chance really, rather than just sort of like turning up, taking a spanking and, heading back down the M8. And, this is the first time in a long time that I've seen Hibs play at Ibrox with, that amount of kind of, I suppose, confidence, belief, which I think is a big thing. And, there were so many chances where if you just had, somebody had shot a split second sooner, if they just managed to get a toe onto something, Dwight Gale's header at the end, the penalty, a lot of chances. And, yes, you do have to take these chances, but, I mean, there are ways of losing games. I think managers sort of say this quite a lot. There are ways of losing games, and, I think to lose a game like that 1-0, you've done everything in your power to get back into the game after a penalty miss or save, whatever you want to look at it. I think that's got to be sort of like quite heartening for David Gray. When he sort of looks at that and thinks, this is what I told him to go and do. This is what I told him to go and do. They've done it. Half time, we'd suffered a setback, but we bounced back from that, and they very nearly did. I don't think too many people would have begrudged him getting a point from that game today.
Yeah.
And I think very, very unfortunate or very, unlucky that they didn't take anything from the game. But they've got Motherwell next week at home. It's you can build on the good bits from today's game. I mean, we'll get an update during the week as to the fitness levels of Martin Boyle and Joe Newell, but that's potentially more players who are coming back and giving the coaching staff a decision to make when it comes to personnel. And I think we knew it was going to take time under David Gray just because of this sort of player churn, a lot of new players coming in, a lot of players moving out. He's not been helped by the injury to Ellie Yuan that he suffered in the League Cup group stages. We've obviously got Kieran Bowie injured, Junior Hoylett's just back. We've had a couple of other players who've been getting up to speed, sort of being slowly fed back into sort of regular senior football, if you like. And even the likes of Kwon didn't have a lot of first team football last season. Obviously got a run of games at St Mirren, but I think his first game, he did look understandably rusty. But I thought again, today really promising performance. Could have got a goal or two, a couple of efforts from the edge of the box, and that's what you want to see. You want to see, that belief, that confidence, that sort of, we're not going to walk the ball into the net. Let's just sort of not be overawed by the occasion. Again, something David Gray's spoken about, and maybe he benefits from having played here as a player and having won here as a player and having won here as a captain as well. I think that he'll know what you need to do. He'll know play the occasion. Play the game, not the occasion. And, sometimes that's all it takes. But I think despite the defeat, a lot of positives to take from today, and that's the message from David Gray. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they manage to build on it against Motherwell next week.
Yep, I think that sums it up. Disappointing result, but a performance that Hibs can take encouragement from. We're going to leave it there, folks. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with a fuller analysis of the game, full stats analysis. We'll have a look at where it was won and lost on our website. As I say, thank you very much for joining us. Do consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you're watching us on there. We do appreciate it. And as I said, we will speak to you again very, very soon. So enjoy the rest of your weekend.